All right, well, according to my clock, it is time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to beautiful sunny Madrid, where we're enjoying IETF 112, and this is the CALEXT session. So if that's what you want to be at, here you are. I'm just going to run us very quickly through the first couple of slides here. The note well, which by now I think most of us know very well. Either we've seen it this week during the calls or at other times. Everything that you contribute during this session is covered under these various best common practices. So please note these well. I've also added another slide that I have seen floating around at this meeting, basically saying, please be nice, please behave well to people, please be aware that there will be people who might be quite new to your area and don't know all the jargon and all the backstories on everything, so make them feel welcome as well, and don't assume too much knowledge. Thank you, sound. All right, with that said, here's the agenda. So this is what we were planning to talk about so far at this call. If anyone has anything you would like to change or talk about here, please pop in the queue and let us know. Hey, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I mean, there's nothing changed really for the drafts in progress, unfortunately, since we spoke, 3 weeks ago. And the relations thing probably will take a little more than 5 minutes.
Cool, that's fine.
But
I figured that might be the case.
It'll probably end at the same amount of time, maybe a little less.
Cool. The other thing I'd say just up to start before we get into this, with a group this small, I think unless things start getting a bit crazy about anything, feel free to just hop in and talk if you want to talk, rather than raising your hand and waiting to be requested. It makes things a little bit smoother in a small group like this. So, Mike, would you like to control the slides, or do you want me to pop them up and go through them for you?
If you could put them up for me. There's only,
Sure.
3 and a title.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's move on then.
So, among the various comments, somebody said the security section ought to have some comment about the perils of XML, because there's an XML reference. I couldn't find anything I could lazily copy and paste from anywhere. Oddly enough, I did find plenty of blog entries about the problems with XML, things that the XML specifications don't appear to have anything like a security section. So I think I made up something like that last paragraph. The only thing I could find anywhere was a reference in WebDAV to the problems with XML entities. Basically, I'm just asking if anybody else knows of anything useful I could point at, or whether that last paragraph will do as a warning to read further. I guess if people are using XML, maybe they know the problems, but maybe that's a wrong assumption to make. But that's all I could come up with.
But was the comment something generic, or was it?
Yes, it's just the generic problems with XML, because there's an XML reference introduced in this relations draft, and it's just that given that we're pointing at XML, then maybe we should say something about the various security issues surrounding XML, which was a reasonable enough comment. It's just I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So,
but the comment was not pointing to a specific problem.
No,
or something. Yeah.
No, it didn't offer anything like that. So I did some digging around, and that's, as I say, the best I could come up with an RFCs was the WebDAV spec has something about XML entities, which I think is the main problem, but I'm sure there are others. But that last paragraph is essentially where I was going to update the spec with that in the security section, which so that's the XML thing, and I think the only other major comment is the next slide, Bron. This spec has a link property, which is to allow you to specify a link to some external object, which is not a calendaring object. And we said in the draft, in the spec, that you should update the RFC 8288 with it, which defines these the link relations. And Mark Nottingham, who was the original producer of that spec, made a comment that either this spec should be a proper serialization of that link. That spec 8288 is a link header, and it basically formalizes the links in HTML and Atom, and allows you to express them as a link header. And what caught my eye was the various types of link relation. It's useful to have something where you could link to external entities and say exactly what type of external entity it was you were linking to. So this was proposed some time ago without any comment from anybody, and then Mark Nottingham was made aware of it. And in actual fact, as I read through the spec again, I think the relations draft actually is a reasonable serialization of the link header. It's just I don't say so. He defines three attributes, I think. One of which doesn't really apply, but there's a type attribute and a title attribute. The type is corresponds to format type in parameter in iCalendar, and the title attribute corresponds to the label attribute in iCalendar. So both of those actually are valid with the link property. So I think I just need to say that's the case. I mean, he suggested defining our own registry or whatever, not getting tangled with 808, but I think that just leads to more overlap and confusion, because we're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. Having your own registry is just more work.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense defining exactly the same thing. And one of the comments he made was, well, you may get an idea whether you ought to be using the same registry by looking at the current link relations. So I hadn't actually been explicit about any of the existing link relations. I did define a source relation, which is one of the things I think we're missing in iCalendar, is where did this thing come from initially. There is something of the kind for a vCalendar object that Cyrus defined, which allows you to reload the vCalendar object, but there's nothing that allows you to say, where can I go to find a live copy of this thing somewhere? And in event publication, that's very useful, because you may want to be able to point people back to a site which is displaying events or whatever, which is what I do with our calendar system. So having a source property, which a link back to the event as it appears on the site it came from is useful. So I think I just need to be more explicit that this is a serialization of the link header. So I'll add a paragraph to make that the case, and I'll actually explicitly specify that label is the same as title, and format type is the same as type in that header. And they've got things like title star, which allows for a different encoding of the title things, which I don't think that we would do that. I think if you want if you want different, I think it allows for accented characters and weird things like that, which sounds more like localization than anything else. So I guess we could deal with that in a localization thing. And to address his comment about what sort of overlap is there between current link relations, if you could go to the next slide, I noted a few of them, which seemed immediately useful for mostly in event publication, but perhaps not altogether. A long time back, there was a discussion in CalConnect about being able to add copyright information and so on to events. And we actually spent some time discussing it, and it then just got dropped, I think, for some reason. I think the person who was driving it actually left. Those look immediately useful to me, especially in event publication. Being able to specify terms of service, any privacy policy, if there is any, and the copyright information just looks useful. Author might be useful. Payment, actually, we do have a feature in our system where you can register for events and pay them. That might actually be useful. There are a few other things. Web mention was an interesting thing. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that I hadn't really noticed, which look more like calendaring things. There's a whole bunch of them called interval something or other, which relate things together, which seems to overlap with the relations that they're related to temporal relations that I added. But it looks like there might be another useful document on how to use some of the other link relations that already exist. So I think there's a lot that we could use. So that's where I am. I just don't think there's any major changes needed. I don't think this should hold things up. At least that's my feeling.
Just a couple comments from my standpoint. I want to agree with Mike and Brian. I don't think we need to define our own registry. I also think that by using the format type and label properties, we actually do have a serialization. We just, as Mike said, we just need to mention that. And as far as the title star parameter in the actual HTTP header, I think that's for non-ASCII characters. And since we're UTF-8 anyways, I don't think we have to worry about that, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, I can explicitly say that as well, that it's UTF-8, so title star doesn't apply in this.
Yeah. So basically, just adding my +1 to your current plan.
Thank you. Yeah. Good. So I'll try and get another draft out. Oh, go on, Ron, sorry.
Yeah, back on the XML issue, this working group's probably not the best place to find people with a lot of expertise in XML security. But yeah, that looked fine to me.
Okay.
I guess Francesca is probably the one to check with as the responsible area director if she thinks that's going to be sufficient.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I was going to say something similar. It looked okay to me, but I'm not a security expert, and I'm assuming that the security reviews will point out any deficiencies if they feel there are any.
I think the original comment, it wasn't so much that we need to go into any detail about this, but at least just mention that there are security issues with XML. So I think at least I've answered that. Whether having raised the issue, other people think it's sufficient. I think we'll just see how that goes. And as I was going to say,
All
I'll
right,
try and get another copy of this, another draft out in the next 2 or 3 days with these, if that all seems okay.
Cool. That's what I was going to ask.
Oh,
Just what the next steps were.
yeah.
Awesome. Anyone have any comments, questions beyond this on this work? Right, back to the agenda then. The next thing on our agenda is iCal tasks. So we don't have slides for that, I don't think, Mike.
No, and I haven't I haven't managed to do anything with the tasks thing in the last few weeks. Just briefly, I think this has been lying dormant for a long time, and then I noticed that we do make use of some of the oh, sorry, can I just step back a moment to relations? One other slight comment I ought to make is Mark Nottingham noticed the relations draft is actually is referencing that the 8288, but in fact so does JS Calendar, and Ken's comment was, well, maybe we're already due for another errata in that. I guess what's going to happen is we'll have to in some way refer to what I mentioned in the relations draft in JS Calendar. I don't know where a good place to do that is, but I just raised that as an issue that we do actually have this same issue with JS Calendar. So,
all right. Neil, are you happy for me to put the action on you to follow up on that one?
Half asleep, but I guess.
Cool. Consider yourself voluntold.
Please be clear about it, because sorry, we're not very awake.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be in the minutes, so we can chat about it during the day.
It's probably really just a matter of explicitly referring to the whatever comes out in the relations spec. So yes, anyway, back to tasks. Because they've been dormant so long, the world has changed a bit around it. So I need to update the whole spec to refer to the relations work that's moved on a bit since then, and also probably to make use of the participant component to group things together. One of the big things that was going on with the tasks specification was to try to improve reporting of status, and also status related to particular actors in the when you have a task that's being carried out by a bunch of actors which correspond to attendees. You want to be able to relate the status of that per attendee or actor in the thing. So that is, we had a parameter, a group parameter, which basically said this is part of a group of properties. It was a bit of a kludgy way of doing things, and it was because we were frightened of having new components at the time. We stopped being frightened of that. So participant is a more reasonable way to do that. And also the status property in iCalendar is really has the same problems, that you want more than just status. You want to have an associated comment and all the rest of them, and we have sort of that in JS Calendar. So I think the thing to do there is probably to just introduce a new component which groups those things together and allows you to have a status that's much more complex. And so it's there's a fair amount of rewriting to be done there, so I need to get that done.
Cool. And yeah, there was the work coming out of the JMAP tasks as well that needs to be. We need to make sure they stay aligned.
Yes.
All right. I guess we'll probably come back to talking about this when we do the milestones, but clearly the next action is for you to keep working on the document.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions, contributions for tasks? Next up is JS Calendar, iCalendar.
Hello. Yeah. So basically there is unfortunately no progress has been made since our interim a month ago. So that is we are still in a design phase of defining the mapping from JS Calendar to iCalendar. Although the other direction already, as has been said earlier, is already supported quite well. And so what's waiting for us to go into last call for this is to have implementation experience with mapping from JS Calendar to iCalendar. I'll put priority for the Cyrus IMAP server that we now get started with this, so that this RFC doesn't lingers around too long. Mike?
Yeah, I have the another implementation. Is that yes, we've and I've been a little bogged down in trying to get a new release out. But yeah, I will try and push along with the implementation of this mapping, and at the same time update the spec and see if we can get it wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean the link object mapping in JS Calendar is now also depending on the updates to the link definition that has been discussed previously for the relations. Yeah, so there is a bit of dependencies between these.
That's what I was trying to resolve with the tasks and the relations, and getting the relations thing moved along, because there's a couple of things that it depends on.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the next step is that we two get together and sort this out, how we get started with this one then.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thanks, Robert. Yeah, it's just the one slide there, so not much to do, unfortunately, in this meeting because we met so recently. The last thing on our agenda is subscription upgrade in this section.
Nothing extra to report, even since I think the last IETF. It's my feeling is that there are one or two issues that have been raised by people. I think they're more a matter of opinion rather than substantive changes. I think I think this is probably in a pretty good state.
All right, so I mean the question really is, do we do a working group last call on it now/soon? Do we need implementation experience?
Let's say very soon. It's a smallish draft, so I probably need to take a last run through it and perhaps refresh it. That might be the thing to do, is take a good look through it, push out another version just to refresh the dates on it, and then we can decide whether it's good enough to go last call. Would that do it?
Yep, that works for me.
Okay.
All right, the next item on our agenda after this is future work section, VPOL server-side subscription. Planning to, once these documents are out, what does this working group do next? So, I mean, it depends probably a lot on your availability, Mike.
Yeah, VPOL. I did do some updates on the VPOL spec to make use of participant component. We had a component defined in there which is the voter, and it makes a lot more sense to just use the participant component that we've defined already. And so that I think I've done that. I haven't updated my implementation fully, and I think the only other active implementation that might be around which needs updating is Ken's in Cyrus. And,
Yeah, I have not updated it to the current draft.
and so I think I probably ought again take another look at where I am with that draft. I think I updated it all. I can publish it again as a new version, and maybe that will wake things up a little.
Cool. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what Ken's got work-wise in the pipeline at the moment. I think there's a couple of things just landing, and then. So, what do you reckon, Ken? Should we be able to get it this start of next year?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I can try to make an effort to have updated implementation by the March IETF, if not sooner.
Yeah, it'd be good to do some interoperability testing again once we switch everything around, see if we can find anyone else who wants to have a play with it as well.
Yep.
All right, and server-side subscription was the other thing that was specifically on the list to talk about here. I think we're still just waiting on Apple to get back to us on that, aren't we?
I think so, yes.
Cool. That is all we have on our agenda. Is there any other business?
Ron, you mentioned potential future work. Are we still looking for ideas for that? Because I've got at least one. If you just want to throw it out there. Mike and I have talked this on some of our CalConnect calls that 5545 and 46 probably are due for a refresh. I'm just looking at 5545 right now. There's 17 verified errata. There's looks like five other specs that have updated it, which could probably be rolled in. And given some of the current discussion with DMARC and IMIP, I think 5546 probably needs some new language in terms of how to properly deal with someone sending invites or replies on someone else's behalf. That said, I don't know if there's enough energy in this working group to actually take on all that work.
One of the things I've suggested in the past that we really are lacking is a document that is just specifically describes the calendaring data model, independent of representation. It's sort of, you can disentangle it from iCalendar if you look closely enough. And when we have things like JS calendar, it's trying to support essentially that same data model with a different representation, but it's really hard to tell whether we're doing it right or not. And there are other representations that are around now and could be around in the future. And perhaps rather than simply bringing out a new unreadable document, we could consider the possibility of producing a document that describes the calendaring data model. It won't be any less work, but it might be more valuable than simply. It's the kind of thing they do. Sorry.
I was going to say, it sounds like something similar to what HTTP BIS has done, where they split the wire format from the actual semantics.
Yeah, it's more valuable going forward because I think it allows us to define a different other formats and representations, and be able to have something you can say, well, it actually does represent this data model. And it's what they do in Oasis. I think they are required to produce these things they call, there's PIMs and PUSMs, which is a platform independent model and a platform specific model, which is, one is the actual data model, one's a representation. I think it would make a lot more sense, I think, but it's still probably a lot of work. I know that people in something like in the smart grid world, they really like their UML diagrams. They actually use that stuff so it might make sense to investigate that.
Yeah, what we really need to do is find some people who are keen to have some published documents in their name and have lots of time and are interested in this field. The question is, where do we find these people?
There is actually a data model specification, which isn't complete, but it could be. It could actually take a lot of the work out of it. It's going back to Oasis. When we did WS Calendar, they defined a PIM for the WS Calendar spec, which is a subset and a modification of iCalendar. So it may be worth looking at. So there may be something to start with.
But I'm wondering, to me, if I have to refer to the model, I'm going to read GS Calendar. And I'm wondering who is the target for such a document? And how is it going to be more readable than a GS Calendar? Or even if we take the iCal specification.
It's when you get around to manipulating the data that the problems arise. And iCalendar tries, and you end up having to go back to, probably at the moment, you have to go back to iCalendar and ITIP.
Well, sorry, we're talking about ITIP is different. Like if it's just the data model, like JS Calendar, iCalendar, I feel JS Calendar does make it pretty clear. I don't think a separate document is likely to be much clearer. JSON, the kind of JSON format is, it's easily representable in lots of other ways too. Yeah, it kind of almost is just giving you the data model there. Now the ITIP exchange, on the other hand, yeah, I agree, the current docs are very hard to understand properly. And that could do with an update potentially.
Yeah, I think we probably want to try and extend to being able to send an ITIP with JS Calendar rather than just iCalendar content as well.
Yes, I think you do it as just another bit in your text alternative. And yeah, we talked before about kind of upgrade paths as well to get away from IMIP for everything, which we can do more easily with JS Calendar, which would be nice.
All right, that sounds like it's definitely going to be some upcoming work. In terms of actions from this, do we just leave it for now and start it later? Does anyone want to take on proposing a document or proposing work here?
I'm not doing anything right now.
I think we probably need to get our current work off the table, and then if we do move forward with updating the iCalendar base specs, that might need a recharter. I haven't looked at our charter recently, but I don't think that's going to be part of it.
Well, why don't I share a screen? Which is this one. This is what we've got in the queue right now. Relations is getting towards the end. These documents we've just discussed. Server-side subscriptions. I think it's already in that list. Let's have a look at. I think our charter gives us reasonable scope to maintain those. We say we're going to develop the specific things we've done. Extensions will be backwards compatible. So out of scope is changes that impact backwards compatibility with existing stuff and any attempt to develop non-Gregorian calendar systems. So yeah, we would probably want to specifically say we are going to go back and redo all the documents. I think people might have questions about redoing them entirely rather than just extensions too.
It's not. Well, I mean, I think it probably does need a new charter, but it's not redoing them entirely, right? It's just putting all the errata in, trying to clean up some language we know is commonly confusing. Yeah, maybe merging if there's extensions that should all be part of one document.
Sorry, we can't hear you. Yep.
I'm having this almost exact conversation with another group that also wants to work, and they are not. It's not explicitly mentioned in the charter. So I think I would go to the ISG and ask if the charter includes absolutely the case, because to me it would be reasonable to do maintenance work. That's not.
Yeah, Francesca, your sound's very unclear. I'm getting every second word.
Oh, sorry, I'll write.
That's much better. All right, from the start.
I try again. Let me just check. Can you hear me?
Not very well, no.
Okay. It's better
Nope.
now.
No, it's not.
Okay. I will just write it in the chat.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Francesca. I'm tempted, if we were to do a recharter, to recharter basically to say this is where all calendaring related stuff happens. We maintain this whole set of documents. We do extensions to them. We refresh them when necessary. Please come here if you have calendaring stuff. And that way we say, yes, we own and look after this section and work will happen here, rather, because the length of a charter like this and the very specificness of it, it does sound like it's a waste of everyone's time to be rechartering every time you do a new document.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's essentially what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, so two things. If we don't need to recharter, I'm not for it. So whatever we want to do, if there is an agreement and it can't fall into the charter, it's good to avoid this work. If we feel we do really have to recharter, then I agree with Brown that we should not be so much specific, so to avoid rechartering every time we have a new idea.
So let me pitch in as the AD who originally chartered this working group. The idea at the time was that there was a fixed set of things that needed to be worked on that was being brought in from CalConnect, and we chartered it to handle those items without thinking that it would be a long-running working group that would just keep processing new stuff over time. So I agree. If we're going to spend the time rechartering, we should recharter it in the latter form as a long-running working group to deal with calendar stuff, and I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think there's going to be plenty to do. By the time we refresh all these things, there will be new stuff happening in calendaring space, no doubt.
That I disagree with Francesca that chartering is a big deal. It should not be a big thing to do. You ought to be able to spend a reasonably short amount of time putting together a charter that describes what you want. And it's not a big process in the IESG. It should take about a month. So I think you should do it, because then it gets you ready for the future. And yeah.
Question for Barry.
All right.
Do you feel that we should recharter now, or a personal opinion?
I want this to be a long-running calendar related stuff working group, that rechartering to make it clear that that's what this is worth the trouble. Because then you will not get issues from ADs saying, wait, how does this fit into your charter? And that's always a danger if you don't recharter, that somebody might call you on that.
And it's not like there's any competing groups trying to do calendar work.
Sedate being the date time stuff. Yeah, no, it's fine. I know one of the chairs in that group, and I'm sure they'll be fine with it. All right. I'll do the first pass at this, Daniel, and discuss it with you. Sound good? Cool. That's an action for me. All right. Any other business?
You have milestones yet?
Yep, that's the last bit. Here we go. Submit task draft to ISG. I think I was supposed to update these already and have not yet done so. When do we think task's going to get done?
I'll try and get a new draft out in the next few weeks. It's probably going to be sometime in December, but I may manage it earlier.
So we submit in January, I guess, by the time we've had time to...
Yeah, we still need time to look at it. So I'll try and get it out as early as possible.
Cool. Subscription upgrade. We said it's basically ready to go, didn't we? So
yeah,
we should be able to submit that next month. JS calendar mapping document, Robert.
JS calendar is, I'd say, we should be done by April. Yeah.
Cool. Calendar series.
Why April and not later, not before? Is it a specific date?
I thought the next IETF is in April.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I mean, one of the reason I'm raising that question is you mentioned that you need some more deployment, so
experiments. Yes. So there are two things to that. So for JS calendar specifically, since we are in the progress of working with JMap calendars, this is also an occasion to finalize the mapping. So that's about the time frame I was looking at to get that done.
Okay, good.
All right. Calendar series, Mike.
Yes, I haven't had
this one. This one has gone back to sleep.
Yes, it has for the moment, but I need to wake it up. What's the date on there?
Yep.
I can't see it.
So it's set for March 2022, which is already off in the future. But is that too aggressive?
It probably is, given that I haven't had a chance to even look at it for the last few months.
Let's kick it to July. That's
July.
At the IETF out.
Yep.
VPOL is set for June 2022. I think that's far enough in the future. We can deal with that at the next IETF. And ditto server-side subscription. All right. Did we have any additional milestones to add? I don't think so. Tasks is in there, JS calendar mapping documents in there, subscription upgrades in there, iCorrelations already submitted. Yep, all done then. Anybody have any other business before we close out the meeting? I believe that the next time we meet will be at next IETF. The next CalConnect is after the next IETF. Nottingham, May 2022. All right. Thank you, everybody. We get 10 spare minutes.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.